My guest this afternoon, it's an exclusive honor to have with me in the studio. I've done that. We in the studio, His Excellency Roey Gilad. He's the Ambassador of the State of Israel to Ghana. Ambassador, welcome and thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for inviting me.
I am honored to have you in my studio.
I'm honored to be here.
Especially being the new ambassador of the State of Israel to Ghana. It's an exclusive honor, I must tell you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward. I just presented my credentials to your president last week.
This morning.
Indeed. And by now I'm not a designated ambassador anymore, but indeed a full-fledged
ambassador. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
What has been your experience like since you arrived in Ghana?
Look, I need to tell you that Ghana is a very warm place, a very welcoming place, the state of the Akwabe. And since we arrived, we are surrounded by warm, by people who would like to welcome us, and we feel at home. This is a second Israel for us.
Really?
Yeah. So far, I must tell you, as far as Israel is facing many challenges, I'm sure we're going to speak about it later on. But people here, I visited already many churches where they pray for the sake of Jerusalem, the sake of Zion, the sake of Israel. And really, my wife and I, we really feel at home here.
Any similarities in terms of how we live here in Ghana, the environment, the weather to Israel? Any similarities?
Well, the weather is more or less the same. I think the heat, the humidity is things that I'm used to in Tel Aviv. I think, people here might be even more friendly than in Israel. In Israel, people are friendly, but here people are very friendly. It's very easy here to establish conversation with people. In Israel, sometimes Ghana reminds me Israel like 20 years ago when Israel was more naive. And you didn't lose yet this naivete, which I find is a big compliment because, in many places, this is already my sixth overseas mission. I started my career in Africa, though in the East Coast in Kenya. And now I'm here in between. I've been to many places, to Jordan, to the UK, to the US, to Turkey. And so this is my sixth overseas mission. I've been to many places before, and I really find that Ghana is a peak in the warmth, in the hospitality, in the way it welcomes the guests, being tourists or ambassadors.
But you are not an ambassador of your country just overseeing activities in Ghana. You also have responsibility over Liberia and Israel.
Liberia and Sierra Leone.
Yes. How are you going to marry that? I guess that must be a very tough detail for you.
Indeed. So just before coming here, I got an official invitation by the president of Liberia to go over there to present my credentials there. Afterwards, I intend to go to Sierra Leone to present my credentials there. Obviously, it is more challenging to, I would say, manage bilateral relationship in the place where you're not resident of. So it's, in that sense, it is easier for me to promote the relationship between Israel and Ghana, since this is my place of residence. It's going to be a little bit more challenging with Liberia and Sierra Leone, but I'm adamant of doing a good job for my country, for Liberia, for Sierra Leone, and certainly for Ghana.
I am not envious of your position at all, especially when you have to deal with 3 African countries, 2 out of which have very serious developmental challenges. I mean, Ghana can pride itself with a lot of things. Liberia just came out of a war. Sierra Leone has its own issues and all of that. And having to play this supervisory role must be quite tough. What would be for you your key focal areas as you take over this office?
Well, I think the main, or my number one on my agenda is for the three countries. Each of the countries has its own specifications, but overall, I think my main responsibility will be to make people understand better the challenges that Israel is facing, the unique geopolitical situation where we find ourselves, the two wars that we are conducting now simultaneously with enemies nearly all over Israel. And I have a feeling that sometimes this unique challenge is not being understood in a good way by many places, not only in Africa, but mainly in Africa. And I think this is my main responsibility to explain to the best of my ability this, or to depict to the best of my ability this situation and make it more understood to the people in Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone.
Let's get into that already, because it appears to be the topical issue on the minds of a lot of Africans, and most Africans are confused as to what stands to take in the course of the war. You are waging a campaign simultaneously, as you said, against about four countries. You consider them as enemies, and how the world understands the position of Israel is quite important to it. How do you justify what Israel is doing today in Gaza, in Palestine, and also in Jordan?
Lebanon. So first of all, just a countdown of the people that are, or the proxies that are trying now to bring down Israel. So everybody knows about Gaza, where we have both the Hamas and what is known as PIJ, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. In Lebanon, we have Hezbollah. In Yemen, we have the Houthis. In both Iraq and Syria, we have Shiite militias. And above all, we have the power who motivate them and push them and finance them and send them armed. This is Iran, that had already attacked Israel directly twice, on the 14th of April and the 1st of October, and they are threatening to do it for the third time. So indeed, Israel, I think our situation is second to none in the world. I don't know any other country that is engaging at the same time 5 proxies and the master of terror, the Islamic Republic of Iran. This is the geopolitical landscape, the geopolitical framework of 2 campaigns that we are running now, one in Gaza, one in South Lebanon. Those campaigns do not make us happy. On the contrary, we are aware of the price being paid by the civil population, both in Gaza and in South Lebanon. However, we are adamant to finish this crisis with a much more stable situation, with much more peaceful situation, where the people in Gaza post-Hamas and the people of Lebanon post-Hezbollah can live next to Israel and not instead of Israel.
But the very people you're hoping to be alive to live next to Israel are the very people your campaign is running over. Children are dying, women are dying, civilians are dying. You're actually bombing civilian populated communities. How do you justify that, as in the same vein you are looking forward to having them be alive to live next to Israel?
So I do not intend to depict a picture which is brighter or more optimistic than it is. The situation is really very complicated, certainly in Gaza and also in Lebanon.
Yeah.
In Gaza, it is complicated because on 240 square kilometers, you have 2 million people, which makes it the most congested area in the world. And when you try to bring down a terror organization that at the beginning of the campaign had about 40,000 terrorists, I'm talking about Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, that are hiding in tunnels with a lot of food and a lot of ammunition behind a population of 2 million people. There is no way to do it without causing, again, I don't know if the numbers are accurate, but obviously the price is enormous. But one should ask himself, who is responsible for that? And we take it that the responsible for that is Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon. We said from the very first beginning, you remember it all started on the 7th of October 2023. We were taken by a big surprise. Hamas terrorists butchered 1,200 Israelis and hijacked, kidnapped to Gaza 251 Israelis. That 101 of them are still there. We told the Hamas activists, Hamas terrorists, we are going to come after you. We are going to put an end to this chaos, to this source of terror in Gaza. We are willing to live next to Gaza, but without Hamas.
Are you sure you are willing to live next to Gaza, or you are willing to annex Gaza to Israel?
No way. There is one minister in the Israeli cabinet who's from the right wing, radical right party, that is talking about it, maybe 2 ministers. There are nearly 30 ministers in the Israeli cabinet, and the huge majority is against it. What we would like to see, a Gaza which is not a source of terror against the state of Israel, what we want to see is that the 7th of October 2023, which was a huge trauma for all of us, I don't think we've recovered from this trauma already, is the last 7th of October. We are not willing to face anymore such a threat. And indeed, I believe that, the day that Hassan Nasrallah was eliminated by us, just the day that, the day that Yahya Sinwar was eliminated by us in Gaza, and Hassan Nasrallah the following day was eliminated, or the day before in Lebanon. There were many Lebanese and Gazan people that were happy. They know what part of the Western media do not know, that he who is responsible for this terrible situation at the end of the day is Yahya Sinwar, who started this campaign against Israel in Gaza, and Hassan Nasrallah, who started the campaign in Lebanon. At the end of the day, Israel is a strong state. We were taken by a huge surprise, but we have recovered, and we are about to make sure that the situation that happened will not repeat. We told the Hamas terrorists, lay down your weapon, and we let you leave the area. Give us back our hostages. Lay down your weapon, just surrender, leave Gaza to a third state. We don't want to see you go to Egypt, go to Sudan, go to wherever you want. And they choose to fight, and now they're paying the price.
And now they are paying the price, but it's sad that they are not the only ones paying the price. It's unfortunate that civilians who don't have any relevance to this war are rather suffering, especially children and women. But please clarify this for me. When I asked the question whether you are hoping to annex Gaza to Israel, you said no. The perception, especially in Africa, is that Israel wants to take over Gaza, own it. The fight for a lot of Africans is about a piece of land. But you are saying that is not the objective of Israel.
I say very clearly, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity, Israel, that has to be said, there is a minority of radical right-wing politicians and some people in Israel that would like to see annexation of some part of Gaza. This is not the position of the government. Okay. This is not the position of a huge majorities of Israelis that would like to see what we call the day after in Gaza. Gaza, which is not controlled anymore by Hamas, but by a Palestinian authority that is being supported by the US, by Egypt, by the EU, by other moderate Arab countries. Gaza, which has no arms, it has to be demilitarized, that has to be clear. It has to be de-radicalized, because currently in Gaza, in the mosque, in the schools, unfortunately, under Hamas authority, they taught them how to slaughter Jews. We believe that there is a day after. but the day after should not be shared by the Hamas. We believe that the Hamas, we are looking for a regime change in Gaza. The Hamas actually kidnapped not only 251 Israelis, but it also hijacked 2 million civilian population, and Hamas is holding them as human shield. So as much as the price in human life is terrible, I think one should put the blame of the organization, of the terror organization who is responsible for that, and that is the Hamas.
So the blame should not be on the one going through the human shield.
I think the blame should be directed against the Hamas. They could have, even after what they did, they could have laid down their arm, give back the hostages, and leave the area to a third state.
But you also have hostages from their side, don't you?
We don't have hostages from their side. We have prisoners that have went through the judicial system. There have been a judge ruled for them to be in jail for that period or that period. So most of their prisoners went through our judicial system. Unlike the 251 that have been hijacked, 101 are still there. They are held in the tunnels in Gaza. And I must tell you, I don't think all the 101 are still with us. I don't think people can survive in such a situation with no air, no oxygen, no light, terrible humidity. I'm afraid that many of them are not with us anymore, but in order to end this conflict, we must get all of them back, dead or alive.
What is the nature of hostages? What category of people are you looking at? Are they civilians? Are they soldiers? Who are they? Who is being held?
You're talking about our hostages?
Your hostages, yes.
Well, some of the hostages are soldiers. Most of them are citizens. Obviously, the citizens should be released immediately. We believe that also the hostages should be released. We are willing for certain kind of swap of prisoners,
Okay.
if you wish. Nevertheless, the situation as it is now, after the leadership of Hamas was eliminated, Hassan Nasrallah, Mohammed Deif, and all the list, we believe that the end of Hamas is quite close. That is to say, we believe that it takes time, and we are already more than 400 days in this campaign. But we believe that after the leadership is gone and after the international pressure on the Hamas to put an end to it, we shall see the end coming soon, but not before we manage to release and we manage to get back all our hostages. For us, it's a priority.
Do you know the number of hostages?
Currently, there are 101 hostages that did not return yet from the 251 that have been hijacked on the 7th of October 23, which is 403 days ago. As I told you, unfortunately, I'm afraid some of them, not to say many of them, are not with us anymore, that they have died in the tunnels. I don't have the exact numbers. I only know the overall number is 101.
Okay. So you want a regime change in Palestine?
Not in Palestine, in Gaza.
In Gaza. You want a regime change in Gaza?
By all means. And we are nearly there.
Are you sure? I'm wondering whether this campaign will yield that regime change, because Hamas over the years has proven to come back.
That's true.
So how do you uproot Hamas?
So, first of all, even currently when we speak, we see a strong resistance of the Hamas again in the north of Gaza. Okay. Much of what you hear now about presumably humanitarian crisis in the north is a new campaign. It's like a fire. You think you managed to put an end to the fire, and suddenly you get the fire in another place. This is like, it's like a fire. So now we have, again, a fire in the north of Gaza, in Jabalia, Bet Lahia, other places. And we are really fighting the Hamas over there. And we told the local population, the civil population, you need to evacuate the area. Go again back to the south. It's unpleasant, that's for sure, but it's better to evacuate the area as much as it is unpleasant then to get killed as part of those military engagement, the new military engagement between Israel and Hamas. Indeed, you're correct. Hamas has proved to return to the arena time and again, but never they had such a campaign. Never they faced such a campaign as the one we are running now against them, and the international community, and the Arab states, and part also of the population in Gaza. The day Yahya Sinwar was eliminated by us, many people in Gaza were happy. Many people support him. I do not deny that. But the population in Gaza, it will be wrong to depict it as if all of them support the Hamas. I strongly believe that the big majority would like to live next to Israel and not instead of Israel, as Hassan Nasrallah and the rest of the leadership of Hamas wanted, and drove Gaza into a terrible tragedy.
98.9 FM, check with your time. It's 2:30. My guest this afternoon is His Excellency Mr. Roey Gilad. He is the ambassador of the State of Israel to Ghana. Onona ewe beneno edi enkomo na yenkomo no enam eye Ghana ene Israel ye relationship a yawo over the years. Ena afi nsuso no papa ibaye nanu ya no de ne nkrata koma ye mampani a ode bona mane se ne man Israel asoma no se ombra na ombesi wona namu enra eno yes adwuma last week ena ode ne letters of credence koma ye mampani His Excellency the President na yankomo no atiesi ntokwa ekoso ewo eye between Israel and Gaza ena afi nsoso eye Lebanon na papa ichira ambassador chira o chiremu ni nti a omutu sa esa no ewo eye Gaza eye Hamas eno mu de omani asi omu so Hamas fo no omubu omu se omu ye terrorist wono eye nkofobia omu abeje Gaza aboso ene waka ni pen asi ni pen se Israel epese regime change ebaso ewo eye Gaza kire se aban no ana political administration na ewo Gaza no Israel for pese free ho esesa na omo edu a political regime a ene wo mo adwene se efata na ebekọ na nensemu no mabusa se na o pese o per regime changer ntokwa na wo de bekọ na war na de be achieve regime changer na o say o by any means necessary ekwan bi on befa so a omo betu o mase no omo beye bibusa se na obetimi nso akire ne enti a womo eku wono a ntokwa emfa womo hu baabia mekan Lebanon say areas no ma bombe ni nyina no ye areas a eye dominated by civilians wono mo nya sojafo womo nye terrorists ensuso no womo akunkum krofo wo ho okira wono mo a womo hwehwe wo no womo de omo akosie sa nipa yi achi ena kwese womo de omo bo omo ho ban nti womo nim sa ha de wona ete ha no nye nipa bonefo nti anya de Israel fo ba be bombe ena omo de omo akohye akiri ho no mo na omo hye omo achi na omo di bone nti se ekoba ne sa de a na ewo se womo fa nipa ni mu no mo kokoto ne omo pe no ne de a eyade a womo ebeye yenkomo no ne tintini ne tietia a waka so far ne nyina eno no. But won't you agree with me that this campaign is also making Israel very unpopular?
Yes.
It is.
Of course, but that's why I'm here to explain the unique situation we are facing.
Some countries are calling that the UN should call you out.
I'm aware. Malaysia just started a campaign against Israel. I'll tell you frankly that our situation, our relationship with many African countries are paying a price for it. But again, at the end of the day, you are talking here about the most important human right, which is the right to live in a safe environment. I think one needs to ask himself, what would, let's say, the government of Ghana would do under such a circumstances, under such an attack? You know, let's speak in something that will be familiar to your listeners. you have a failed state on your northern border. I'm talking about Burkina Faso that went through a coup d'etat, and the situation there, as we know, is not good. Ghana is a very stable state. And yet, once you have a failed state just next to your border, on your northern border, you have still two stable, very stable and strong states on your eastern side, Togo, and your western side, Côte d'Ivoire. But on your northern side, you do have a challenge. And yet, Ghana is a huge state. Ghana is 10 times bigger than the state of Israel. So the terrorists who do penetrate to Ghana from Burkina Faso, there is a huge buffer zone between the centers of the population in Ghana and the terror. In Israel, we don't have any buffer zone. Israel is 10 times smaller than Ghana.
Hence, in terms of land size?
Yes.
Okay.
Hence, any attack, either from, let's put it this way, there is no, I don't want to intimidate people who would like to visit Israel in the future as tourists, but currently, there is no 1 square kilometer in Israel which is not covered by missiles coming either from Lebanon or from Gaza. And I'm not mentioning even missiles that are coming from Iraq or from Yemen. So the situation
You are
is
taking
different
missiles from Iraq and Yemen at the same time?
as well. Yeah, and we managed to intercept them, and also missiles coming from Iran. So far, the IDF managed to intercept most of them, not all of them. By the way, we lost many soldiers and many citizens since the beginning of the campaign, 404 years ago. To answer your question, because I don't want to evade the questions, yes, we are paying a price in our popularity, but we are adamant. We are adamant to make sure that this campaign is the last campaign, and we shall achieve peace, stability, and tranquility in the Middle East in the long run. The way to do it is to get rid of the terrorists, either Hezbollah or Hamas. For too long, we turned a blind eye. And we thought, this is just like an animal who sits next to you and you feed it and you feed it and you feed it and you think that's it, that it will be a peaceful animal.
And one day...
No, and one day it comes to you and it tries to bite your hand or your leg or to kill you. We learned a lesson. We made many mistakes. We are not going to make more mistakes.
I am wondering how the state of Israel can invoke any UN charter to advantage, considering the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu is defying UN institutions and all of that. There are calls on him to stay action and all of that, and he's defying these institutions. Can Israel ever invoke UN charters to its advantage looking at this?
We feel that we are facing in the UN what is called the automatic majority of states that automatically vote against Israel, whatever we will do. If we do good things, if we do bad things, automatically...
They will still vote against you?
They will automatically. It's like a button that you push, they hear Israel, they vote against. Many of them are...
Even if it is positive?
Indeed.
Really?
Of course. Many, I think all the Arab countries, I think there are 21 members of the Arab League. Most of the Muslim countries, there are more than 50 states who are members of the Islamic Conference, who's based in Jeddah, in Saudi Arabia. So yes, we are facing dozens, if not hundreds of states that automatically will vote against Israel, whatever we will do. I'm happy that Ghana is not part of it. That has to be said, and I told it to your people, to the president, that Ghana's record in the multilateral level can be improved, but Ghana is not part of this automatic majorities that vote against Israel, whatever we are doing. And yet, at the same time, we understand that the UN is an important place, is an important arena. We go there whenever we are being called by the Security Council. Our ambassador goes there to present our portfolio Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu used to be our ambassador to the UN. He knows very well the importance of the UN, so we do not undermine the UN.
You do not undermine the UN. It's an interesting controversy going on within the UN, and it appears in terms of regional blocs and their attitude towards what is going on has been repeated in history. I mean, in 1973, the OAU then, now AU, had the occasion to call on African countries to sever relationship with Israel, all because Israel had taken over the Sinai Peninsula, and that happened then. But you are getting the support of African nations, or you are not getting that kind of opposition now as you are waging this campaign in Gaza and Lebanon. It's interesting how things have changed in terms of the position of the regional bloc in Africa then and now.
So it didn't change enough.
Okay.
That has to be said. In 1973, what happened was, Mr. Brown, Bismarck, I can call you Bismarck.
Oh, yeah, sure.
It's a nice name.
Bibi is okay too. Bismarck Brown, Bibi is okay.
Bibi.
Yeah.
So, Bibi, I think what happened in 1973 was that the Arab League took the AU for a ride, took the OAU at the time for a ride.
Really?
There was no reason whatsoever to severing the diplomatic relationship with sub-Saharan African states and the state of Israel. So the North African state, mainly the Arab League states who are members of the African OAU at the time, took the OAU for a ride. They simply manipulated the organization. And since then, as you said, indeed, in 1996, Israel and Ghana renewed relationship. In 1989, I was at the time in Kenya. Kenya renewed relationship. Very fast, the African state renewed relationship with Israel. I'm talking about sub-Saharan African state. Also, Ghana was in this process. As for the organization, what is known as the AU, the African Union, who used to be the OAU, our relationship with the organization are still not good.
Okay.
We were granted the status of observers.
Okay.
And unfortunately, the status was frozen later on. So currently, the status is not very
It's
clear.
like Israel is not very much liked.
Look, Israel, that is what's so frustrating. Israel contributed a lot to the stability and to the development of Africa, much more than many other states. We are not looking for influence. I don't want to offend any other countries that are manipulating this wonderful continent to get a hold of the minerals and all the wonderful things you have here, oil and gold and
natural
wood
resources.
and natural resources. We are here because we feel that there is an historic bond since the days of Golda Meir in the 50s that put together the state of Israel and the continent of Africa. You have 54 states.
That's true.
Including North Africa. I would say that I think with about 46 we have diplomatic relations. And we are doing our utmost to support the development of those states.
Okay.
Yet, on the organization level, we have good relationship with ECOWAS, with SADC. Those are the regional organizations. But with the continental main organization, which is the AU, unfortunately, our relations are not the way they should be. And you didn't ask me, but I do expect Ghana to be more vocal in support for Israel, both in the UN in New York, but also in Addis Ababa at the AU headquarters. For I believe that at the end of the day, this will serve also the benefit of Africa to make Israel more part of the scene, less criticized, less isolated. And I think Israel, so far since our independence in 1948, 9 years before you gained your independence, Israel proved to be very relevant to the development of Africa, and we intend to do so in the future as well.
Ghana's foreign policy is largely non-aligned. I mean, we prefer to stay in the middle. How are you hoping to get Ghana to support Israel at the UN level and at the AU level in the midst of this campaign?
I think I might be wrong, Bibi, but to my impression is Ghana is very open to the West.
Okay.
I understand that you maintain a very
neutral
policy, but I think still Ghana is very open to the West.
Okay.
And is very open to Israel. I'm not judging. I'm not judgmental. I didn't come here to judge your foreign policy. Let me say this: between Israel and Ghana, the bilateral relationship are excellent.
Okay.
We do expect more from Ghana sometime on the multilateral
level
arena. Either in the UN, until lately Ghana was a member of the Security Council. By the way, now Sierra Leone, one of the three countries I'm responsible for, is a member of the Security Council. In the future, also Liberia will be a member. So it's Ghana and Sierra Leone and Liberia, which is great for the Israeli ambassador here.
But we have actually co-chaired with Israel one of the committees in the UN.
That might be, but currently you are a member of the Human Rights Committee in Geneva.
That's true.
And next week you are going to chair the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Association, who's going to meet in Vienna for 3 days. And the portfolio of Iran is going to be discussed by the board members, and Ghana is going to, as we say, Ghana is going to be the chair. Ghana is very important for the African Union in Addis. In all those arenas, which the common denominator is multilateral diplomacy against bilateral diplomacy, let me say diplomatically, we believe that Ghana can be more influential and play a more vocal part in support of Israel. I'll give you another example. Israel was attacked by Iran twice, directly, 14th of April and on the 1st of October. There is an Iranian ambassador here. Was he ever called to your Ministry of Foreign Affairs to condemn what they did? After the 7th of October 23, Ghana was one of the first African countries to condemn the Hamas and to support Israel. Hamas is a terror organization. What you did is remarkable. Jerusalem was very happy about it. Ghana was really one of the first states that did it. But now, since then, Iran, which is the master of terror in the Middle East, attacked Israel twice directly, and they didn't hide. They said, we attacked Israel just out of the blue. I would expect Ghana to condemn it publicly and say this is something that is unheard of. To call the ambassador here or just to publish a statement. No other African state did it. That has to be said. But we expect more from Ghana.
You expect more from Ghana.
Indeed.
What more have you given to Ghana to expect more from Ghana?
So we actually are conducting a very significant, deep relationship. Israeli companies are involved here. Israeli investors are here. Again, many Ghanaians are going to pilgrimage in Israel. Many go to studies, either through our international development agency known as Mashav. There are 1,500 Ghanaians that attended different courses in Israel. Many others went to do their MA degrees, academic studies in Israel. Those are historical relationships. I think both states historically, with some ups and downs, as you said, between 73 and 96, we had a down, but since then we have a peak. And both me and your ambassador in Israel, Lydia, are adamant to bring those relationships into new peaks.
How are we doing in terms of trade? I just want to look at the balance sheets. How is Ghana doing in terms of exports to Israel? and what is Israel's interest in terms of what you bring to our economy? How is the trade front doing?
So the numbers are not great in the trade. I think the distance between Israel and Ghana, the fact that there are no direct flights, you have to go either through Europe or through Addis, this reflects not in a good way in the numbers. The numbers are nearly $50 million a year both ways. It's not a great number. It's modest number. So first of all, I think we need and we can improve it. But when judging the economic partnership, trade is only one element.
Okay.
Investment is another element. We are involved here in areas that are familiar to you, like HLS, Homeland Security, cybersecurity. That's a big topic in Israel, and there is a huge thirst in Ghana to learn from the Israeli experience. As you know, agriculture and other stuff. A new topic that we are developing lately is cannabis.
Whoa.
Cannabis becomes, there was an act that passed the parliament here, and Ghana, with a little help, might become the biggest exporters of cannabis all over Africa. Israel is already an exporter. It's not allowed in Israel nor in Ghana for what you call creative use by the people, but it is allowed to use it for medical reasons. And Israel is already an exporter. The technology in Israel is cutting-edge technology, and lately we had a seminar in which 50 Ghanaians, farmers, and some dozens Israelis were on Zoom, and it was done through the internet, and there was a huge interest.
Okay.
So we are searching traditional areas like agriculture and modern areas like this cannabis.
Okay.
Also, we are checking how we can be relevant to the gold mines.
Okay.
I'm not talking the Galamsey,
Galamsey.
God forbid. I'm talking about the real,
Proper mining.
the proper mining.
You have
How
a few companies down here already, right?
we have one Israeli
One.
companies,
Okay.
but I'm talking more about bringing a cutting-edge Israeli technology
Okay.
to help with the mining process. That's another area that we are investigating
But
right
Israel
now.
doesn't do mining per se.
No, we in
Yeah,
Israel.
so I'm wondering the technical competence and
Eh,
whether we can rely
this
on
is
it.
what we are checking right now.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we don't have gold in Israel. We have a lot of natural gas. This
Okay.
is a new discovery in Israel that is bringing really the Israeli economy into new heights.
Okay.
So we have a trade mission, a strong trade mission in the embassy, who's working day in and day out in order to advance the economy partnership between the two states. I always say I'm an ambassador, but the real ambassadors are the business people, the businessmen, Ghanaian businessmen going to Israel, Israeli businessmen coming here. At the end of the day, I'll stay modest and I will say they are the real diplomats. This is the real diplomacy, P2P, people to people. I'm in charge of G2G, government to government, but it is the P2P, people to people, and the B2B, business to business, that at the end of the day, they really make the bilateral relations.
I am interested in the cannabis conversation, and because back home it's a very sensitive conversation. We have a society that has a huge religious background, and therefore we have a different perception of cannabis and all of that. Yet we have passed a law in our parliament to explore the possible industrial, as it were, value addition to cannabis. I think we are still working on the implementation and the modalities and all of that. But what went into the thinking for Israel when you decided to look at cannabis as a means of economic growth?
You'll be surprised. Israel is very much like Ghana in that sense. Also in Israel, I think at the end of the day, the backbone of the society is very conservative. And when the government decided to go ahead, it was mainly about export, not for domestic use.
Okay.
Domestic use in Israel is permitted for medical reasons.
Okay.
Not for
Recreational.
Look, if the police catches somebody who used it for his personal use for recreation, he's not
Arrested?
He's not selling it. It's only for I think nowadays the police in Israel will turn a blind eye.
Okay.
If the sum of cannabis they found was very little, I think they will turn a blind eye. But this is none of my business. My business is to develop all kind of new areas on top of the traditional areas that we cooperate already, agriculture and by the way, also some defense industry. There is some cooperation. We help Ghana to protect your northern border, the border we spoke about. But it is my responsibility, together with my trade mission at the embassy, to keep on searching day in and day out for new fields. I met at the embassy the establishment here who controls, who was nominated to implement this act that was adopted by the parliament. They all came to the embassy. We had a very serious meeting. Okay. So the authority that was built to implement this topic. Whatever we do hand in hand with your government. Okay. Much was done, and still much needs to be done in the future.
What do you see or foresee the future of Ghana and Israeli relationship? And if I ask that, I'm asking about the future economic and trade areas you would want to explore. How do you see Ghana and Israel economically and politically as well?
Look, Bibi, you are having elections in 1 month.
Yeah.
We met with the leaders of the two parties. Obviously, they have many differences and few things in common. But one thing in common, I think, is the appreciation and the wish to have strong relationship with the state of Israel. Okay. So again, I met leaders from both sides, and this is one thing. Both of them assured me that whoever is going to win your elections, still Israel is going to be in his heart, and the relationship, the strong relationship with Israel, are going to be on his agenda.
And any specific message? Because the U.S. and the British High Commission in Ghana have issued, I'm not too sure how to call it, but it's more of a caution to political actors who may, out of their actions and inactions, plunge this country into chaos during the election. And they have said that you can't create chaos in your country and think that you can run away to a country and cool off. Has Israel taken a similar stance?
We are following the elections here, the preparations, very closely. It's part of our responsibility as an embassy, just as your embassy in Israel is following the domestic situation in Israel. That's a responsibility of each embassy all over the world, also Ghanaian embassies all over the world. And it is my conviction that the tradition of stability and accepting the results of the elections, whatever those results will be, will continue. I think you have a very strong tradition of democracy, and I have no doubt in my mind that this tradition will prevail also through the coming elections.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. But I need to ask you this very last one before you go.
I have a feeling this is going to be a very difficult question.
Oh, no. It's probably the easiest question.
Okay.
A lot of young people are asking me to ask you about educational opportunities in Israel and what is available in terms of scholarship, in terms of assistance to study. What is it like?
So actually, the academic year in Israel just started, and so I just saw that there was quite a number of Ghanaians, also Liberians, who went to Israel for master degrees. In Israel, it is mainly for advanced studies, master degrees, PhDs. I don't know. I'm talking about academic studies. I don't know many people who went to Israel for
undergraduate
or bachelor degrees. Usually those that are going for MA or PhD.
Postgraduate courses, yeah.
This is on the academy level. We have in Israel, as I said before, the Israeli International Development Agency, which is part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who already welcomed 1,500 Ghanaian students, including your Minister of Foreign Affairs, Shirley, who attended a 2-week course in Haifa in Israel on women empowerment, and see where she got. So maybe we have some part in her achievement.
The prospects are bright.
Indeed. And so there are nearly 1,500 Ghanaians who already went to Israel through those. And in this part, we usually pay all the cost in Israel. The student has to pay for his flight. So this is one area where we put forward. And the third one is what we call h0stages, which is mainly for farmers here who would like to advance their knowledge, and they go to Israel for a year. They study 3 days in a week, 3 days in a week. They are working in farms. One day they have off, they do pilgrimage. And within those 3 elements, academy, development, and h0stages, we try to do the best. We don't have budget like the US or like the UK or like Germany, but with the small budget that we have, we are trying to do our best.
Ambassador Roey Gilad, I appreciate your time this afternoon. I hope I did a good time management of this interview.
By
exactly
all means,
3 on the dot.
Should invite me again.
We have to have this again. We have to. I've enjoyed this session. Thank you so much, and enjoy your stay in Ghana. Have you tried any of our meals already? Of our foods? Have you tried?
Of course, jollof.
Okay.
Of course, I'm a great admirer of jollof with fish, with meat, with only vegetarian. I think I will open eventually a restaurant after I'm going to retire from diplomacy, and the Ghanaian menu will be the central in the center of the restaurant.
Good to know. And I'm sure you would also be exploring the rest of the country as time goes on.
One topic I didn't mention is football. Many Ghanaian football players, soccer players, are playing in Israel.
Okay.
In the history, Israel played once against Ghana. It was way back in Mexico, Olympic Games 1970. There is a lot of interest in Israel for what the Black Stars are doing here. What I myself gave some visas to some Ghanaian players who are playing now in Israel. Maybe in the future I can even arrange a game between the Black Stars and our national team.
That would be awesome.
I'm very much keen about sports.
I'm looking forward to this.
I'm very much keen about sports, and this is one thing I would like to achieve. Try to achieve in the future.
Good to hear. We are actually the #1 sports station in Ghana. So I'm looking at ways we can cooperate on the sports front and see what events we can put together with the embassy and to advance the cause of sports. I appreciate your time, Your Excellency, once again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day, sir.